My name is Charlene Trantham. I am 43 years old, and for 19 years I have made my living walking through other people's houses and telling them what they are worth. Christmas Day, a little after 2 in the afternoon. 16 of us at the long table in the dining room at 611 Cane Fork Road, which is the house my husband and I have lived in for 9 years. I had just set the roasting pan down on the trivet at the end of the table. I still had my oven mitts on. That is when my mother-in-law reached into her cardigan pocket and slid something across the tablecloth at me. A house key. My spare on the twisted paper bread tie. I had put it on myself. "This house was never yours," Verna said. She said it at a perfectly normal volume, which at that table meant every person heard it. "Rennick and Suzanne come in the 1st of February. That gives you 5 weeks, honey." I'd start with the closets. 19 years of carrying the pan, and she got all of it into one sentence. I did not argue. I have never in my life won 1 inch by arguing with that woman. I took the mitts off and I laid them on the sideboard and I said, "All right." 5 weeks later, her son backed a rented box truck up my driveway. I came out my own front door with a manila envelope. The whole thing took about 90 seconds. Welcome back to Thistlebank Stories, where the overlooked finally get back what's theirs. Let me back up. I appraise residential property in Wardell County up in the North Carolina hills, and I have done it since I was 24. I write appraisals for banks before they will make a loan for estate settlements and for people in the middle of a divorce. That means I have stood in something like 1,100 kitchens with a laser measure in my coat pocket. People tell me what their house is worth. I write down what it is actually worth. You learn things doing that. You learn that everybody rounds up on the good and forgets the roof. You learn that a house will tell you the truth about a family a long time before the family does. I married Dale Trantham when I was 24. His mother, Verna, was gracious to me at the wedding, and she has been gracious to me ever since in the way that leaves a mark. Every compliment Verna handed me had a deduction line printed under it. "That dress is lovely on you, and it hides so much." You know the kind. If you have a Verna, you know exactly the kind. Dale has a brother, Rennick, 4 years older, who moved to Charlotte in his 20s and became the one they talk about. There is one of those in most families. Whatever Rennick did was remarkable. Whatever Dale did was fine. Our girl is Josie. She is 16, and she has her father's hands and my mouth, God help her. The house on Cane Fork Road was built by Verna's husband, Cecil, in 1974. It is a plain 2-story farmhouse with a bad porch glider, and there is a spring in that glider that has squalled since before I met any of them. Cecil died 13 years ago in the spring. I sat with him a good bit at the end. About a week before he went, he took hold of my wrist and asked me to look after Verna, and I told him I would. I have never once mentioned that conversation to Verna, and I am not going to start now. 6.5 years ago, Verna moved into an apartment at Laurel Court in Bricetown. 2 rooms and a little kitchen because the stairs at Cane Fork had gotten to be a problem. Dale and I moved in and started paying the upkeep. Rennick pays for Mama's apartment. Everybody in that family will tell you so. It comes up at every gathering the way weather does. I also took over Verna's mail forwarding when she moved because somebody had to, and because I am the one who does the somebody has to things. The property tax bill on Cane Fork comes in August. It comes to me and I pay it, and in 9 years I have never once let anybody else touch it. Dale thinks that is me being particular. I am particular. That is not why. And on the 3rd Tuesday of every month, I drive the 40 minutes to Bricetown by myself. I have done it for 6 years. If anybody asks, and they mostly do not, I say it is for work. The Register of Deeds is in Bricetown, and an appraiser lives on comparable sales, and every word of that is true. Before I go on, do me a favor and tell me in the comments what town this is finding you in. I like knowing who is in the room, because what happened this past year was not one big thing. It was 4 small ones, and they went in a straight line uphill. The first one was in March, and it took 6 weekends. Verna owns a little rental down on Pigeon Creek that Cecil bought in 1988. The last tenant left it bad. Water had been running behind the kitchen wall for most of a winter, and nobody had thought to cut it off. Verna called me on a Sunday afternoon. "Charlene, you know houses," Verna said. That sentence is how every unpaid job I have ever done in that family got started. 19 years of it. Charlene, you know houses. So I cleared it. 6 Saturdays and part of 6 Sundays. I wore a mask because of what was living behind that wall. I hauled somebody else's soaked carpet out to a rented dumpster in the side yard. One roll at a time, and a roll of wet carpet weighs a great deal more than you would guess. I took that kitchen down to the studs. I found the leak, too. It was a 1/4-inch supply line to an ice maker that had not been hooked to an ice maker since the Clinton administration. Then I wrote her a condition report. The real kind of, with the photographs and the itemized deficiencies and a scope of repair at the back. Banks order them before they will write a loan. Insurance adjusters order them after a claim. That is a $400 document, and I do about 9 of them a month. I did not charge her $1. Rennick drove up from Charlotte on the last Sunday. He stood in the doorway with his phone in his hand and said, "Looks good in here." He was there 11 minutes. Then he went to get barbecue. The house rented in May for $900 a month. I found that out from the tenant. A young woman named Kayla called me because my number was on the front of that condition report, and she wanted to know who to make the check out to. I said Verna Trantham. Kayla said no, ma'am. She had been told to make it out to Rennick, and she was only asking because the names were different. I said that sounds right, and I thanked her, and I hung up and stood in my kitchen for a minute with my hand still on the phone. I am going to be fair to myself here, because this is where somebody listening starts to wonder why I never said anything. I did not have to say yes to any of it. I said yes because I always say yes, because I liked Cecil, and because there is a part of me that keeps figuring if I am useful enough for long enough, one day somebody will look up and notice. It may be that you have that same part. The second one was in June at the reunion at the shelter house at Pigeon Creek Park. They do a photograph every year on the concrete steps. Verna organizes it because Verna organizes everything, and she has a voice for it that carries clean across a park. I was at the end of the second row with Josie in front of me. Verna came down the line straightening people. She got to me, put her hand flat on my forearm, and said, warm as fresh bread, "Honey, this one's blood only. You go on and take it for us." So I took it. Now here is the thing. I have taken that photograph for 9 years, every single year. Somebody has to hold the camera, and it is always me. That was just the first year anybody said out loud why. I set the camera on the picnic table and got everybody's chins up and counted to 3. I took 4 of them so there would be one where Doris had her eyes open. Then I put the camera down and went and got the sheet cake out of my trunk. Josie came and stood beside me at the trunk. She was 15 then. She said, "Mom," just the one word. I said, "It's a photograph, baby." Later, at the long table under the shelter, one of the Kennard cousins from over at Silva asked who I was. Verna said, "That's Dale's wife." Not my name. She was not being cruel. That is the part people never believe. She was answering a question, and that was the true answer as far as she was concerned. I had been late getting there that day because it was the 3rd Tuesday of the month, and I had driven to Bricetown first. Verna made a little joke about it in front of Doris and about 9 other people. "Charlene had her errands," Verna said. "Charlene always has her errands." Everybody laughed. I laughed too because it was funny and because that is the price of admission. The 3rd one was in September, and I am still not all the way over this one. For years, Verna has told all of us that she had money set aside out of Cecil's insurance for the grandchildren's dental work. Every grandchild. She said it at Thanksgiving. She said it in the fellowship hall after service. She said it in front of my daughter more than once, which is the part that matters. Josie needed braces, full set 22 months later, and the orthodontist in Bricetown is out of network because up here everything is out of network. I called Verna. I want to be precise about this. I did not ask. I mentioned it. In 19 years, I have never asked that woman for $1, and I was not about to start over a child's teeth. Verna said the money had gone to Rennick's too. I said, all right. And then she said the part I did not need. She said it kindly, which is how she says everything. "They're carrying the name Charlene," Verna said. "Josie's got you." Josie was standing at my kitchen counter when that call came in. Doing algebra, one earbud in and one out the way they do it. So she heard about half of it, which with a 16-year-old is the same thing as hearing all of it. She did not say a word. She went upstairs. She came back down around 10 that night and stood in the kitchen doorway in her sleep shirt and said, "You could have told her about all the stuff you do." I said, "It wouldn't change anything, baby." And she said, "It would change what she gets to think." 16 years old. I did not have an answer for her then, and I am not certain I have one now. She got her braces in October. I paid for them, and we managed, and I want to be clear that we managed. That is not the part that hurt. If you have ever been told there is not enough, right after you watched There Be Plenty, then you already know it is never really about the money. It is about being handed a number and being told the number is you. Comment, "I know," if you have ever been the one holding the pan while somebody explained the family to you. The fourth one came the second week of December, and it came with a tape measure. Verna called and said she was coming out to Cane Fork. She did not ask whether it was convenient, and I did not say that it was not. She got out of Doris's car with a yellow retractable tape from the Dollar General, the kind that reads to 16 feet if you are lucky and if the little hook has not bent. And she walked my house room by room, hooking that tape on my door frames. I stood there with a laser measure in my coat pocket. It reads to 200 feet. It is accurate to an eighth of an inch, and it cost more than her car payment. I did not take it out. She measured the back bedroom and said Suzanne would want the light in here. She measured the dining room and said the long table would have to go. It made the room feel small. That table has stood in that room since 1974. Cecil built the sideboard it sits against. In the kitchen, she ran her hand along the cabinet fronts and said it was a shame somebody had painted over the original wood. I put those cabinets in myself in 2019. I paid for them out of a job I worked over a 4th of July weekend. There is no original wood. There was particle board and a hinge held on with a matchbook. Then in the upstairs hall, she stopped in front of Josie's door. She stood there a while. She did not say one word, and she did not open it, and somehow that was worse than anything she said all afternoon. On the way back down, she stopped at the landing where the stair runner is worn through and said, "Somebody ought to see about that." I put that runner down myself in 2016. I will see about it when I am ready. In the front room, she counted the windows out loud. 11, she said. There are 9. I did not correct her. I have thought about that a good deal since. 19 years of not correcting her over things that cost nothing. Doris waited out in the car the whole time with the engine running. At the front door on her way out, Verna patted my cheek with 2 fingers. "You and I have an understanding," Verna said. "Always have." I said, "Yes, ma'am." Then I stood on the porch and watched Doris back down the gravel. The glider squalled behind me in the wind, and I thought, she is going to do it at Christmas, in front of everybody, because that is where it counts. I was right about that. What I did not know was that she was going to hand me a key and that she was going to do it while I still had the oven mitts on. We had 16 that year, Verna and Doris. Rennick and Suzanne down from Charlotte with their 2. Pastor Eugene Sharp and his wife. Hollis Mabry from across the road, who has eaten Christmas with us since his wife died. A couple of cousins. Us 3. I cooked from 6 in the morning. Ham in the blue enamel roasting pan, the one that is chipped at the near corner because I dropped it in 2014. Sweet potatoes. Vinegar slaw. The rolls I do not make well and make anyway. Josie set the table and folded the napkins into something she found on her phone, and they looked good, and she was proud of them. Verna sat where she always sits at the head, which is a thing I stopped noticing years ago. Here is what I want you to picture because it matters to the rest of it. I am at the far end. I have just come in from the kitchen carrying pan. There is a moment at every holiday dinner where the noise drops for no reason at all, everybody at one the way it does. That is the moment she chose. That woman has timing you could set a watch by. She reached into her cardigan and put the key on the cloth and gave it a little push with one finger. "This house was never yours," Verna said. "Rennick and Suzanne come in the 1st of February. That gives you 5 weeks, honey. I'd start with the closets." Nobody said anything. Rennick looked at his plate. Suzanne looked pleased and tried not to, which is about as far as Suzanne goes. Suzanne's kind of nice is a drive-by comp. Close enough from the road, nothing you would ever stake a number on. Pastor Sharp started to say something and thought better of it. I have wondered since whether he had been told beforehand, and I have decided I do not want to know. Dale said, "Mama." Just that in his church voice. Verna turned to him and said, "Dale, honey, it's the family home. It goes to the family." Then she looked back down the table at me. She was smiling, and her voice had that laminate finish on it, the kind that wipes clean. And she said the second thing. "You've been a guest in this family for 19 years, Charlene. A welcome one, but a guest. I would like to tell you that something rose up in me." It did not. What happened was very quiet and very clear. If you have ever had a shot go through you sideways instead of straight down, you know the feeling. My hands were steady. I was thinking about the trivet and whether that pan was going to scorch the cloth. I set the pan down on the trivet. I took my mitts off and laid them on the sideboard. I said, "All right." Then I picked the key up off the tablecloth and put it in my apron pocket because it was my key. And I went around that table and served 16 people ham. While I served, the table started up again, the way tables do. Somebody asked about the roads. Suzanne asked whether the dining table conveyed, and Verna said she supposed that was up to Rennick now. Doris tried twice to get the conversation onto her hip. Verna kept steering it back to paint colors. Doris did ask me one thing directly. She asked whether I would be going down to Bricetown that week. Before I could answer, Verna said, "Charlene never misses her errands." Everybody laughed the way they had laughed at the reunion. I said nothing and went on serving. I went around that table twice with the pan. Nobody would look at me the whole time except Hollis Mabry, and Hollis did not look at anything else. Josie's napkins were still folded the way she had done them. Every one of them. Not one person had shaken one out. Josie did not eat. She sat there with her jaw set, 16 years old, and twice she started to open her mouth. Both times I put 2 fingers on her wrist under the table, and she stopped. She has not forgiven me for that yet. She may not need to. Hollis Mabry helped me carry dishes to the kitchen afterward, which he has never done in 9 years. He stood there drying a bowl that did not need drying, and finally said, "Charlene." I said, "It's all right, Hollis." He said, "It's not, though." That is the only time all day I came anywhere close to going to pieces, and it was over an old man with a dish towel not over her. Everybody was gone by 6. Dale went out to the shop and did not turn the radio on, which is how I know when he is upset. I stood at my own sink and looked out at the dark. Then I did what I have done my whole working life, which is add up what a thing is actually worth instead of what somebody says it is. Then I got a shoebox down off the shelf in our closet. I sat on the edge of the bed with it and counted. 71. Let me tell you what was in that shoebox. 6 years ago this February, Verna nearly lost that house. Cecil left her the place free and clear. About 4 years after he died, a fellow came through the county selling reverse mortgages at the senior center, and Verna took one. That is not a crime, and it is not even foolish. Plenty of people her age did. She drew against it and spent it on ordinary things, the roof, a car, Rennick's second wedding. But a loan like that comes due when the borrower stops living in the house as her main home. She moved to Laurel Court in the fall. The following August, the servicer sent the letter. I saw the letter because I do her mail forwarding. I will be honest about what I felt at that mailbox. It was not noble. It was mostly cold. I knew inside of 10 seconds what that letter meant, and I knew nobody else in that family would. I took it straight to her. She got Rennick on the phone from Charlotte. He said he would handle it, and Verna hung up satisfied. I drove home. Rennick did not handle it. 2 months went by, then 3. In November, I called the servicer myself, got a payoff figure, and sat out in my truck with the number written on the back of a comp sheet. $118,462. I did not have it. What I had was 19 years of a decent credit score and a job the bank understood. Marcia Ledford at Bricetown Savings wrote me a 20-year note in my own name for the payoff and the closing costs. $743 a month due the 3rd Tuesday. The bank wanted an appraisal of its own before it would write that note, and I paid for that too. I would not appraise it myself. You are not permitted to appraise a property you hold an interest in, so I hired Nolan Pruitt out of Bricetown and paid him his full fee. We closed on the 3rd of February at Wendell Colley's office. The payoff went out through escrow, the lien came off the title inside of a week, and Verna signed the deed over to me at that table. She was 65 years old, she was in her right mind, and she read every line because that woman is nobody's fool and never has been. Then she walked me out to the parking lot and asked me for one thing. "Don't tell Rennick," Verna said. "He said he'd handle it. Let him have said it." I told her I would not. 71 receipts, rubber band around them. The week after Christmas, I went and got the paper. The deed was easy. The Register of Deeds will hand anybody a certified copy for a few dollars, and it has read Charlene R. Trantham since the 5th of February, 6 years ago. What I wanted was the settlement statement, the one that shows the payoff going out and where the money came from. A deed only proves I own it. It does not prove I bought it for them. Wendell Colley retired 4 years ago. His building is a dentist's office now. I drove out to his place on Route 215 on a Thursday, with fog still in the low spots. He is 79. He came to the door in a barn coat, knew me right off and then his face closed up when I said what I wanted. "You suing somebody, Charlene?" I said, "No, sir." "Because I don't go in families," Wendell Colley said. 41 years and I never once did. I told him I was not asking him to take a side. I was asking whether he still had a box. He stood in that doorway a long time. Long enough that I started doing the arithmetic on what I would do without it. The answer was nothing. A deed and my own words against a woman with 16 witnesses and a story 6 years old. Then he said, "Boxes are in the garage. They're not in any order, and I'm not climbing." It took 2 hours and 40 minutes. Mice had been in the bottom row. We found it in the 4th stack in a folder with Trantham written twice on the tab. The settlement statement was right there on top. He copied it on a machine in his kitchen that took a minute to warm up. At the door, he shook my hand. "I remember her face at that closing," Wendell Colley said. "Tell her I said hey." The harder part was Dale. I told him on a Tuesday night, in the truck in the Ingalls parking lot, because we had gone for milk, and I could not do it in the house. I laid all of it out. The letter, the note, the 3rd Tuesdays, the shoebox. His mother in a parking lot asking me not to tell his brother. Dale did not say anything for a while. Then he said, 6 years. I said yes. "You let me think we live here because she lets us." I said yes. And then my husband, who is the mildest man in Wardell County, put both hands on the top of the steering wheel and said, "That was mine to know, Charlene." He was right. If you have ever kept a secret that started out as a kindness, you know how it turns. It does not go bad all at once. A kindness with no bottom to it stops being a kindness and becomes the shape of the room, and everybody learns to walk around it, including you. Verna asked me to keep it from Rennick. I kept it from Dale, too. That part was mine, and I did it because some piece of me wanted to be the one who never needed a thing from anybody. We sat in that parking lot until the milk was warm. Then Dale said, 1st of February. You want me standing out there or you want me in the house?" I said standing out there. They came at 9 in the morning on the 1st of February, which was a Saturday. Freeze that driveway for me a second because I want you to see who was standing in it. A 26-foot box truck from Bricetown Rental backed up almost to the porch steps with Rennick and a boy from his work already dropping the ramp. Suzanne in the Lexus behind it with a cup of coffee. Verna in the passenger seat of Doris's Buick. And Pastor Eugene Sharp off to the side of the gravel in his good coat, holding his hat, because Verna had brought her pastor along to keep it civil. That is the detail I would like you to sit with. She brought a man of God out to watch me be put out of a house, and she was not the least bit nervous, because in 6 years she had never had one reason to be. Hollis Mabry was across the road on his own porch with his coffee, not pretending to be doing anything else. Verna came up the walk with a piece of paper folded in 3. I do not know to this day whether that was a real notice or something Suzanne printed off the internet. It does not matter, and I never asked. "You've had 5 weeks, Charlene," Verna said. I came out my own front door and let the screen bang shut behind me. Dale came out and stood at my shoulder. Josie stood inside the door where I had told her to stay, and did not stay. I did not raise my voice. I have thought 100 times since about whether I should have, and I am glad I did not, and not for the reason you would think. It was not dignity. It was that every single thing I was about to say was true, and true does not need any help. Let me say this to every one of you who has ever paid for something quietly and let somebody else be thanked for it. There is a difference between keeping a confidence and disappearing. It took me 6 years and a Christmas ham to find where that line runs. I said, Verna, before Rennick puts that ramp down, I want to hand you 3 things. The first was the certified copy of the deed, Charlene R. Trantham, recorded the 5th of February 6 years ago. The second was the settlement statement out of Wendell Cawley's garage. Payoff to the loan servicer, $118,462. Source of funds, a note at Bricetown Savings in my name. There was a payoff letter from the servicer in that envelope too, and the recorded satisfaction of the mortgage. Nobody ever got that far. The third thing I did not hand her so much as set down on the porch rail because it was too thick to hand anybody. 71 receipts, $743 third Tuesday of the month, every month for 6 years, including the third Tuesday of last June when I was late to the reunion. Then I said the only sharp thing I said that day. You told me this house was never mine. I let that sit a second. That stopped being true on the 3rd of February 6 years ago this Wednesday. You were sitting across the table from me when it stopped. And here is the part I did not expect. The part I still turn over at night. Verna did not deny it. She did not say she had been confused. She did not say she had not read it or that I had tricked her. She looked at that envelope, and then she looked at me, and her chin came up. You gave me your word you'd never bring it up, Verna said. That is the first thing my mother-in-law said. Not to me exactly. She said it at me, but it was meant for the driveway, for Doris and the pastor and her 2 sons. She had not forgotten one detail of it. She had built 6 years of a different story on top of a thing she remembered perfectly. And she had bet the whole hand on me being exactly what she had spent 19 years telling everybody I was. Quiet, useful, not a problem. She was almost right. That is what I want you to hear. She was right for 6 years. Rennick came up the walk and read that settlement statement twice. His face went through about 4 different things. I stood there and watched a 49-year-old man find out in his own mother's driveway that the thing he had been thanked for at every holiday since was done by somebody else. He said, Mama, is this true? Verna said, Rennick, get in the car. He did not get in the car. He read it a 3rd time. Pastor Sharp put his hat back on and walked to the Buick and got in the back seat. He did not look at anybody. By Sunday, the whole church knew, and not one word of it came out of my mouth. Doris Kinnard is the one who broke. She is Verna's own sister, and she had believed every version of it, and she said it right out loud on my gravel. Verna. Then who has been paying Laurel Court? Because that is the other thing. Rennick pays for Mama's apartment. Everybody knows that. Rennick pays $400 a month toward it, and he always has faithfully, and I have never once said different to anybody. The rest of it is the part between Verna's social security and what 2 rooms in Bricetown actually cost. That has come out of my business account for 6 years listed as an office expense under the name of my firm. Verna reads a bank statement like a hawk, and she would have known my name in a heartbeat. She has been living for 6 years in an apartment paid for by the woman she was throwing out of a house. Nobody unloaded anything. The ramp went back up. Rennick took that truck to Bricetown Rental the same afternoon and ate the deposit. He did not speak to me for 11 months. Then last November he called and talked for 40 minutes about nothing whatsoever, which is how a Trantham says he is sorry. I did one formal thing and only one. Wendell Cawley's successor sent a letter on letterhead to Rennick and to Verna stating that the property at 611 Cane Fork Road is owned by me and is not to be entered without my permission. 1 page. It cost me $190. It is the mirror image of the paper Verna carried up my walk, and I have never once regretted it. I did not put anybody out of anything. I did not touch the Pigeon Creek rental, which is hers. And I did not stop paying Laurel Court, and I am not going to. Dale and I have had that argument twice, and I have won it twice. We had Christmas here again this year. 14 at the table instead of 16. Doris came. Hollis came and helped with the dishes again, and this time it was not a kindness, it was a habit. Rennick and Suzanne drove up from Charlotte. Rennick carried the ham in from the kitchen himself, without being asked, and set it down on the trivet. He looked at me about a second too long. That was the whole conversation, and it was enough. Verna sat where she always sits. I thought about that a long while beforehand. Josie thinks I was wrong. Dale left it to me, but I made a man a promise in a hospital room 13 years ago that I would look after his wife, and he never said one word about whether she would deserve it. She has not apologized. I have stopped waiting on that, and if you are waiting on yours, I would tell you to stop too. What she does now is she asks me things. Small things about the house, about the roof. She asks because I am the one who would know. Out of Verna Trantham, that is practically a hymn. If you have ever wondered whether it is worth being the bigger person when there is nobody around to watch you do it, I do not have a clean answer for you. I lost 6 years of being known. My daughter watched me swallow something at a dinner table that she is going to remember when I am gone. I would not choose that stretch over again. But I own the house that man built. I paid what it cost on the 3rd Tuesday of the month for 6 years, out of a job my mother-in-law thought was driving around looking at other people's kitchens. And I carried the pan in this year too. Nobody made me. That is the difference, and it turns out to be the whole difference. If this one found you somewhere in the middle of your own long story, stay a while. I have more of them, and I would like to know where you are listening from.